Hello and welcome to Verbose Mode by TaxCare at Dev2 Next. It's very sunny Colorado Springs, Colorado. My next guest is Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And you are not stranger to being on camera, and because you do a lot of amazing video content on mostly managerial and kind of people relationship
Yeah, pretty
content.
much. Like, I'm a dev, my background's software development, but I also got into leadership really early, and the thing with leadership is you've got to learn the people skills. Like, you go from solving purely technical problems to solving socio-technical problems. Like, how do the engineers work together, not just how do the software components work together.
And this is, I think, a big reason why developers don't want to become managers is because that they realize how people are different from computers.
Not only are people different from computers, but with computers you give them the same input and they give you the same output. Humans, they could have had a bad night's sleep, they could have had a bad conversation with their partner, they could have had a toddler that was getting on their nerves in the morning, and so you can't guarantee you give them the same input and you get the same output.
Consistent and short feedback versus inconsistent and absolutely undefined variable feedback.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And this is why developers want consistent and short feedback, work with computers, and don't want to become managers. And when they are, they're very frustrated because humans.
Yeah, and the only thing worse than no leader is a bad leader.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
It's one of the first things I start coaching people on is, do you actually want to be a leader? Is it the right fit for you? Because we all know what it's like to have a bad leader, and what I don't want to do is perpetuate bad leaders. Leadership is not for everybody. Some people, it's just never going to be what they want to do, and that's okay.
Speaking about bad leaders, that's a great segue to what we wanted to talk about. By now, 5 years after COVID, I think everybody are aware what burnout is.
Yeah.
Either through personal experience or knowing someone that was burned out because of a lot of reasons. And some of them are more known than others. Overworking. Some of them are less known than the others, like closing the stress loops and this kind of stuff. It's all been spoken through lots of times. The interesting aspect here is the effect of leadership, and especially bad leadership, on burnout.
Yeah. Well, it's never one thing. We have this sense often that it's the crunch time when you're working till 11 p.m. eating pizza, that's what causes burnout. And yes, it can, but often it's the little behaviors that leaders do that they don't realize. In isolation are fine, but it's not a cumulative effect, it's an exponential effect, where doing 2 of these things is not twice as bad, doing 2 of these things is 4 times as bad. And they don't feel like it in the moment, but they all add up exponentially. And it's things like, not respecting boundaries on things like on-call notifications or, messaging outside of work hours. Like, that's the biggest one that I've found, is if your boss messages you outside of work hours, that is one of the big triggers for burnout. Because by itself, it's not a problem, but it's an indicator of a lot of other things going wrong. What you often find then is you've got unstable engineering systems, which is why the engineering manager needs to message you outside of hours. You've got bad definition of product and what you should be doing as an engineering team. All of these things stem from bad underlying processes, systems, ways of viewing what we do as engineers that then build upon.
So what you were saying is that out of working hours, messaging is bad by itself, and I'll get back to it in a second, but it's also a proxy metric that something is wrong in the company.
Exactly. That's it. And a lot of these things, again, burnout is not one instance that's happening. It's all of these little things adding up. Like this is 15 years ago. I worked for a company. I was the head of software development at a company, and we got bought by one of our biggest customers. This customer suddenly realized that his entire business was dependent upon 5 idiots in a warehouse in Wakefield in England. And so to have business consistency, he realized he should buy the business that these 5 idiots were running. So he bought our business, and he was a very smart businessman, but he didn't understand a lot about software development. And what he ended up doing was moving all the software developers into the same room as the customer support staff, and told us we couldn't wear headphones, and told us we had to go to work in shirts and ties, and told us that we had to get there at 8:30 and leave at 5:30.
What can possibly go wrong?
Exactly. You know, one of these things maybe wouldn't have been an issue, but the culmination of all of these together was what caused the issue. And one day, I was driving down the highway, and a semi-truck went past me, and boom, passed. And then in front of me, the windscreen shattered. And I pulled over on the side of the road, like just yanked the steering wheel over, slammed the brakes on, and stopped. Closed my eyes, breathed, opened my eyes. And the windscreen wasn't shattered.
Wow.
What had actually happened, I found out from speaking to a doctor, was I'd had something called an ocular migraine, which I'd never heard of. And what they are is a visual distortion brought about by stress. And it looked like, to me, the windscreen had been shattered. And I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel burnt out. But all of these little things this boss had done had just added up to me just having a breakdown on the highway. And that loud noise of that semi going past me was the trigger that just caused the ocular migraine.
And this is one of the things on the burnout, right? You might not even notice that you have it until a very, very late and deep stage.
Yeah. And that's when it's dangerous. That's when it's really dangerous. Like for me, I could have had an accident because of how I responded to that. But you know, for other people, there's this big trend in Australia called the barista burnout. Mm-hmm. And basically what it is software developers get so burnt out from being software developers, they go and become a barista for 6 months.
Oh yeah, the barista is like raising chicken and bees and all this kind of stuff, which I think is very healthy, by the way.
It's great to take a break.
It's great to take a break. The problem is that those breaks are usually actually breakdowns.
Yes,
not exactly. Just breaks.
They're too late.
Yeah.
It should have come 6 to 12 months earlier.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's obviously two sides to burnout, and I think we're kind of hinting about this a little bit, which is there's what we can do as managers and teams to help it, but there's also the side of you as an individual and how you can recognize what's happening. I think that's one thing that's equally important, is when you stop caring, when you stop, giving a shit, that's when you can kind of sense that you're approaching that point.
This is a great symptom.
Yeah.
It's a symptom that you control.
Exactly.
But the problem is that, first of all, you don't like not caring.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling to work for 8 hours on something you don't care about.
And this is where you kind of in denial, right? And here I'm talking from personal experience. When I felt first time that I stopped caring, I'm like, no, this is not possible.
Yeah.
I love my job. I love this company. I love the people. I always cared for a decade.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no way I suddenly stop caring, so it is something else.
Yes.
And then I keep going regardless and making the things worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's happened to me. You know, you just get into this state where you're just going, why am I getting up and going to work? Because it's what's expected of me. And you know, especially, you know, if you're in a situation where you've got a family, maybe your partner's at home looking after the kids, and there's a lot of social and financial obligations for you to just keep going.
Yeah, no, for us it's kind of not an option. Of course you go to work. Like what is what is the other there? And then you keep going, and then you make it worse.
Yes.
And this is exactly where a good leader can do something about it.
Yeah, and a good leader should recognize that. You know, often, human beings are complicated, and the way each individual person turns up at work is different. You know, I might have somebody whose their natural state of being is kind of a bit laissez-faire and kind of she'll be right, you know, kind of attitude. And I might have somebody whose natural way of being is really focused and caring about minutiae. And both of those are perfectly fine ways to turn up to work. And neither of those would cause me concern as a leader. But what would cause me concern is the change in somebody's behavior. If that person who's normally laissez-faire is suddenly caring a lot about the minutiae, or the person who cares about the minutiae is suddenly laissez-faire, that for me is a big red flag as a leader. What's going on there? This person's behavior has changed. Both of those types of behavior are normal. The change in behavior is not normal.
And this is where there is a prerequisite. And the prerequisite is knowing.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not a small thing, right? It's really something that is expected from a leader, but not necessarily formalized.
Yeah.
And this is where people who get into leadership are in a hard spot when there is a lot of unspoken rules of what they really need to do to be successful, which are not even formalized anywhere.
Do you know, so one of the reasons I started doing what I do, which is talk about leadership, do you know, take a guess, the average amount of time from when somebody is promoted into a leadership position and given any training at all on leadership skills? Do you know what the average amount of time is?
I expect it to be years.
10 years.
I'm not surprised.
10 years.
I'm not surprised. Maybe 10 I am surprised a bit, but if you would say like 7, I would be like, this is what I thought.
Think about it. That's 10 years where you're messing up other people's careers.
You're messing up with people's careers. And this is not surprising because it's an investment that the company is reluctant to do before it's obvious that it will play out.
It's like they let it all go to hell and then they press the emergency button rather than trying to support those people. That moment, that kind of pivotal inflection moment when somebody becomes a leader for the first time, that's the time when you have the most chance of making an impact. Because they're learning what it means to be a leader, they're learning how they need to change. And if you take action then, you're righting the ship before it's 180 degrees off course.
This is very true, but it's also a risk because as we started with, developers don't want to be leaders. So most of the people that will be promoted to this tiny, small first leadership step of being a tech lead or something like that, they won't like it, they won't do it.
Sure.
And that brings the organization in the position of a trade-off. Should we invest in them knowing that they will probably not do it, or should we wait and find ourselves in the position that we actually started too late?
Yeah, this is one of the jobs, I do a lot of coaching of leaders, senior leaders. And a really big important aspect of that role is what I call the leadership pipeline, which is you've got to be thinking, okay, this person looks like they might have the desire and the skills to become a leader. So I'm going to kind of curate them and help them kind of see that and learn that before they get to that point. If you're always being reactionary, if you're in a situation where, our engineering manager just left, who's going to take up the mantle of leadership? That's when you get in that situation.
Exactly.
Like you've got to be proactive and be planning for people to leave. Like it feels like a bad thing to be strategizing about what would happen if your best leaders left or your best engineers left. And it's not, because it happens. People end up marrying somebody from another state and moving, or they get a job offer they can't refuse, and you go, God, I would take that if that was offered to me. Like, these things happen, and it's not an acknowledgement of failure to be planning for what would happen when somebody leaves. It's required of you as a senior leader.
It's actually acknowledgement of good leadership and good planning.
Exactly.
Andrew, that was fascinating. That was tons of fun. I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a lot as well. Thank you very much for being on the Verbose Mode by TaxCare at Dev2Next. And you stay tuned for more episodes of Verbose Mode in more conferences around the world. And see you all soon. Thank you and bye-bye.